Hello there, and welcome to Snail Story. How are you today? Is the sun shining where you are? Or is it gently raining like the soft whisper of a memory? In today's story, we'll meet Layla, an Iranian janitor who once quietly cleaned the floors of the towering Morgan Link headquarters. But one fateful phone call, spoken in her native tongue, changed everything. It led her into the life of Caleb, a reserved CEO, searching for the true meaning of communication. From class divides to understanding, from guarded distance to quiet trust, and from things no one noticed to a love that never needed to be loud, only present at the right moment. This is a story that unfolds slowly but deeply. About recognition, about trust, and about a language that transcends all borders, the human heart. If this story touches you, don't forget to like, subscribe to Snail Story, and share it with someone close to you. Now, let's begin. The steady hum of a vacuum cleaner echoed through the quiet office of Morgan Link Capital, a renowned fintech company in the heart of San Francisco. The wall clock showed nearly 9 p.m., and most employees had left hours ago. Only Layla Monroe, the night janitor, remained diligently mopping the floors on the executive floor. Layla wasn't in a rush. She worked with a peculiar kind of patience, as if every stain she scrubbed away also helped wash off a worry buried deep inside her. Her black hair was neatly tied back, her brown eyes calm and deep, and her face always held a quiet thoughtfulness. Even as her hands never stopped moving, she had been doing this job for almost 8 months. Every night, from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., Layla cleaned meeting rooms, wiped glass walls, vacuumed hallways, and inspected each chair with meticulous care. She was never late, never complained, and always avoided unnecessary contact with anyone. It was a Tuesday night, usually the day when Caleb Morgan, the CEO, traveled for business, so the top floor was particularly quiet. Layla was wiping down the conference table with a damp cloth when a phone started ringing from inside the CEO's office. The black desk phone on the walnut table rang insistently, a monotonous yet persistent sound. She looked around. No one in sight. The ringing continued the 7th time. Layla sighed, dropped the cloth into the mop bucket, stood up, and hesitantly approached the desk. She wasn't supposed to answer phones. That was far outside her job description. But the ringing made her uneasy. What if it was urgent? What if it mattered? By the 17th ring, Layla bit her lip, removed her rubber gloves, adjusted her uniform, and picked up the receiver. Morgan Link Capital. "Good evening," she said softly, trying to keep her tone as professional as possible. A deep male voice replied in Persian, Layla's native language, though she had lived in the U.S. for nearly a decade. That moment pulled her mind instantly back to her homeland. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Caleb Morgan." Without hesitation, Layla responded in fluent Persian. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caleb is not available at the moment. May I assist you with something?" There was a pause on the other end. Then the man asked, surprised, "You speak Persian?" Layla smiled faintly. "Yes, I'm Iranian. If you'd like to leave a message, I'll be sure to pass it along. This is Reza Maradi, an investor from Tehran. I have a critical financial proposal regarding a joint banking initiative between Iran and the U.S. It's a $40 million deal. I need to meet Mr. Caleb as soon as possible." Layla jotted down notes quickly, her handwriting soft and neat on a sticky note beside the phone. She continued the conversation, confirming a callback time, suggesting a convenient location, even sharing a lighthearted laugh when he mentioned the warm weather in Tehran. She had no idea Caleb Morgan had returned earlier than scheduled. He stopped at the door to his office, frozen by the voice of a woman speaking fluent Persian inside. Caleb stood still. He silently lingered behind the slightly open door, his heart pounding. The woman speaking was Layla, the janitor. He had passed by countless nights without a proper greeting in 8 whole months, and now she was speaking Persian, not travel Persian, but the kind laced with eloquence, cultural nuance, and depth. Caleb, who had studied the language in college, wasn't sure even he could speak it that well. When Layla hung up and turned around, she nearly jumped at the sight of Caleb standing there, watch still on his wrist, eyes filled with disbelief. "Oh my, I didn't know you were back." She scrambled to pick up the note that had slipped from her hand. "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have answered the phone, but it just kept ringing, and I only meant to." "It's all right," Caleb said, raising his hand. "I'm just surprised." He looked at her from head to toe, truly looked for the first time, not as a CEO looking at a janitor, but as one human seeing another with a talent that demanded attention. "You speak Persian." Layla lowered her head, just a little. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." A little, Caleb frowned. "You just discussed a financial proposal, used technical terms, and even made a joke about Tehran's weather." Layla said nothing, her hands clasped behind her back. She was used to hiding the parts of herself that ran deep. Caleb picked up the note from the desk. "Reza Maradi, $40 million, you remembered every detail." "Yes, sir. I think you should return the call soon." Caleb glanced at his watch. He couldn't believe that if he hadn't changed his flight, if he hadn't come back early tonight, he might have missed someone like her, and possibly the biggest opportunity of his career. He took a breath. "Layla, how long have you worked here?" 8 months. "And you never mentioned your language skills?" "I didn't think it was useful for cleaning floors, sir." Caleb remained silent. A flood of questions stirred in his mind, along with a vague sense of regret. "We need to talk." Layla looked up, worry in her eyes. "Am I being fired?" Caleb stared at her once more, her quiet gaze, so deep it seemed to hide an entire world waiting to be known. He shook his head. "No, you just saved a deal I've been chasing for a month. And I think we're only getting started." The next morning, Layla arrived at the company earlier than usual. She had no idea what awaited her after the events of the previous night. After changing into her uniform and checking the assignment log, she couldn't find her name under the usual cleaning zones instead. There was a small note clipped to the duty board, handwritten in sharp, confident strokes. "Layla Monroe. Please come to room 38, executive floor at 8 a.m. Caleb Morgan." Her heart raced. For a moment, an old fear surfaced. She had once been fired for answering the phone to help a colleague who fainted in the break room. Sometimes, even doing the right thing could still be wrong, especially for someone like her. Invisible, small, and easily overlooked. But then, Caleb's gaze from last night flashed in her mind. It wasn't the look of a man about to fire someone, it was the look of discovery. Room 38, the top floor of the building, was a place Layla only cleaned twice a week. She knocked softly, her voice trembling. "I'm Layla. You asked to see me. Come in." Caleb was standing by the desk, holding a cup of coffee and a thick folder. He looked more casual than usual, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled, but his face still bore the calm confidence of someone who always knew what he wanted. He gestured for her to sit. The chair, plush and executive, made Layla feel oddly small, like a guest in a place she didn't belong. "I called Mr. Maradi. He confirmed all the details exactly as you noted them. He even said you handled the call with more finesse than some of my professional assistants." Layla blushed. She didn't know how to respond, only tightened her grip on her uniform hem. "What did you study, Layla?" "Masters in Linguistics and Cross-Cultural Translation." UCLA. Caleb paused. UCLA. "Yes, I graduated in 2017. I also hold certifications in French, Japanese, and Turkish. I used to work as a conference interpreter until my contract was terminated for not fitting the image of our European partners." She gave a soft laugh, though it carried a tinge of bitterness. Caleb remained silent. "I couldn't find work for 2 years. Eventually, the cleaning company hired me. No interview required. So I've been doing this job ever since. Silence. Caleb set his coffee down on the desk. I have a meeting with Mr. Marathi this Friday. There's no interpreter who understands both the language and cultural nuance the way you do. I'd like to invite you to be the interpreter for that meeting. Layla's eyes widened. You mean me? You. Caleb nodded. I'll pay you 5 times your current wage, just for 2 days. After that, if things go well, we can talk more long-term. But I'm not even on the company's internal payroll. I'm just a contract janitor. I'll personally arrange for you to be listed as a temporary consultant for the External Affairs Department. You have every right to decline, but I hope you'll accept. Blah. Sat still. Something inside her cracked open. Joy, doubt, fear, all at once. Not because she wasn't capable, but because for years no one had seen her. That entire day. Caleb and Layla worked together in a small conference room at the end of the floor. He showed her the contract, relevant clauses, and discussion points. Layla took notes carefully, asked sharp questions, and suggested ways to phrase things to avoid cultural misunderstandings. For the first time, Caleb realized there's a kind of intelligence that doesn't come from an IQ score or an MBA, but from cultural intuition, from sensitivity to people, and Layla had it all. He watched her as she translated a financial report into Persian, her voice steady, her eyes focused. There was nothing left of the quiet woman pushing a trash cart the night before. She was an entirely different presence. By late afternoon, as Layla was about to leave, Caleb called out, "Do you have any business attire?" "Not really. I have an old outfit I used for interviews a couple years ago." He smiled. "Well, after your shift tomorrow, let me take you to get something suitable. My treat." Layla hesitated. "That's not necessary. I don't want to feel like I owe you." Caleb shook his head. "You don't owe me. This is an investment in an important partner." Layla was silent for a moment, then nodded gently. "All right, tomorrow then." And for the first time in a very long time, she stepped out of the office with a flicker of something stirring in her. Chest, not hope, but the feeling of being trusted. On Wednesday afternoon, a light drizzle fell over San Francisco. Layla stood in front of the mirror in the small changing room tucked behind the building's basement, wiping her shoes and smoothing out the wrinkles in her faded blue uniform. She had just finished her usual shift, checking every meeting room, wiping glass walls, taking out the trash, and scrubbing her hands clean with lemon-scented soap before heading out to meet Caleb. It's just trying on clothes, she told herself, trying to stay calm. But her heart was thudding wildly, as if she were about to compete in some grand contest. After all these years, had anyone ever invited her to buy a suit? Had anyone ever asked what she should wear to a meeting? Outside, a black SUV was already waiting. Caleb stepped out, phone still in hand, but his eyes fully attentive the moment. He saw her. "You okay?" He asked. Layla gave a small nod, not daring to meet his gaze for too long. Her old raincoat was frayed, the hood sat askew, and the canvas tote slung over her shoulder only made her feel even more out of place beside a car like his. But Caleb simply said, "We'll keep it quick tonight, just a few shops. I know a place on Market Street. They've outfitted diplomats before." The car glided smoothly through the city, golden lights flickering on the windows. Layla looked out, buildings aglow, people rushing about. She had once dreamed of working in offices like those, and now she was sitting beside the man who ran one of them. They stopped at a high-end boutique named Esme Taylor's. A middle-aged black woman in a velvet blazer stepped out to greet them, her eyes lighting up at the sight of Caleb. "Caleb Morgan. Been a while, huh? I've brought you a special client." Layla opened her mouth to protest, but Esme was already smiling and pulling her inside. "Darling, look at me. How tall are you?" 5'4", beautiful shoulders, long neck, deep eyes. "Wonderful." She turned to Caleb. "Leave it to me. Layla was ushered into a fitting room. She had never stood between three angled mirrors beneath. Warm gold lights, surrounded by suits sorted by color palettes. She touched each jacket, soft fabrics, precise stitching. Every button sewn by hand. "I'm not sure I belong in any of these," she whispered Esme, standing behind her. Fastened the buttons on one blazer and said, "It's never about the suit. It's about whether the person wearing it dares to walk out with confidence." That sentence struck something deep within Layla. When she stepped out, Caleb was checking emails on his phone. He looked up and froze. Layla, dressed in a navy suit, a white round collar blouse, and modest heels, looked nothing like the janitor he passed by night after night. Her hair flowed gently, her skin glowed under the warm lighting, and her eyes, though still shy, carried something new, a hint of confidence. "Wow," Caleb breathed. I have no words." Layla laughed, her cheeks turning pink. "I probably look ridiculous." "No, not at all. You look like yourself. Just the version the world's been too blind to see." Esme nodded from behind them. "He's right." Layla lowered her head, clasping her hands together in the mirror. She saw a completely different woman. Not because of the clothes, but because the gaze from across the room no longer held pity. It held respect. On the way back, Caleb turned on soft jazz, a warm, wordless tune. They sat in silence for a while. Then he asked, "Why didn't you leave the U.S. if it's been this hard here?" Layla turned to the window, her voice slow. "Because I believe that if I'm patient enough one day, America will see me." The answer caught Caleb off guard. He didn't respond. He just turned to look at her once more, as if to remember this moment clearly. That night, back in her small apartment in the Mission District, Layla laid the new suit on the couch, took off her shoes, and sat on the floor. She opened her old leather notebook, the one filled with dreams since she was 20. On the first page, she wrote a new line. "Today, for the first time, I was seen as a person, not a job." Outside, the rain had stopped, and inside her, something was beginning to grow. Friday morning, the top floor of Morganland Capital buzzed with unusual energy. Assistants, coordinators, and legal staff had all arrived earlier than usual. The glass conference room was neatly arranged, imported mineral water, bilingual, printed materials, and a modern simultaneous interpreting setup all in place. Caleb stood by the window in a charcoal gray suit, tablet in hand. Below, San Francisco basked in pale golden sunlight. He wasn't worried about the numbers. He'd read enough reports, analyzed the risks, and planned for every scenario. What lingered in his mind was Layla, not because he doubted her, but because, for the first time in his career, he had let his heart nod before his head did. And that was a feeling both thrilling and dangerous. 8:55 a.m., Layla walked in. Navy suit, a soft white silk scarf around her neck, hair in a neat bun, and just a hint of makeup. She looked more like a diplomatic expert from the State Department than a former cleaning staff member. Caleb couldn't help but pause for an extra beat. "Ready?" he asked, voice low. Layla nodded. "I've reviewed the summary and negotiation objectives. I'll stay behind the scenes and speak only if necessary." Layla. "Today, you stand beside me." She froze. He smiled. "You're not a shadow. You're the bridge. They need to see that." 9:02 a.m. Reza Moradi, the investor from Tehran, entered with his assistant and lawyer. A tall man in his 60s, salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes. He shook Caleb's hand in the American way, but when he saw Layla, he switched to a Middle Eastern greeting, hand over heart. "Unbelievable. You were the one who answered my call that night." "Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you in person, Mr. Moradi. The honor is mine." He turned to Caleb. "You have a remarkable eye for people." Caleb just smiled faintly. The negotiations lasted nearly 3 hours. Layla translated not only with language, but with nuance, expression, and cultural context. She knew when Mr. Murati was genuinely open to compromise, and when he was just saving face. She transformed dry, rigid phrasing into softened, meaningful communication, helping both sides understand rather than confront. There were moments that nearly collapsed when a clause was misunderstood or when the word sanction froze the room. But Layla calmly explained, restructured the language, and softened the impact so neither side lost ground. Caleb simply sat there. Watching Layla work, eyes lit up every time she handled a situation, her demeanor confident yet humble, her voice steady like a patient conductor guiding a multinational orchestra near noon. Reza Murati finally said, "If Morgan Link can honor what was shown here today, I agree to sign a 6-month memorandum of cooperation." The room erupted in applause. Caleb turned to Layla. No words were needed. Their eyes held everything as the guests were escorted out. Mr. Murati took Layla's hand once more. "You are proof that cultural values never die, not if someone chooses to preserve them." Layla only bowed her head, but her lips trembled with emotion. That afternoon, Caleb walked into Layla's office, now officially named the Intercultural Communications Consulting Room. Located just beside his own, at the desk she was, tidying up documents with the same careful precision she once used to clean the office. "You've done something no one else could," Caleb said. "They're investing at least $40 million in the first phase. It could go up to 150 if all goes well." Layla smiled softly. "I only did my part." "No, Layla, you did what 3 of my former advisors couldn't." He handed her an envelope. "Today's bonus and a 6-month collaboration contract, if you agree." Layla opened it and saw a number she'd never dared to imagine. She looked up. "I didn't do this for money, I know." Caleb paused. "But I want you to understand, you're no longer cleaning up what others leave behind. You're building something no one's ever seen before." Those words made Layla catch her breath. It had been so long since someone named out loud the very thing she had always dreamed of. That evening, back in her small apartment, Layla didn't start the laundry like usual. She sat down, folded her old uniform, the faded blue shirt and paint-stained shoes, and placed them carefully in a small box. On the lid, he taped a note. "The day I began stepping out of the shadow." Monday. 3 days after the successful negotiation, Layla arrived at the office early, as usual. In her hands were 2 boxes, one filled with baklava, the other with sweet chestnut pudding from a small Iranian bakery, a gift to thank the legal team and logistics department for supporting her during Friday's interpretation. But something felt off on the 38th floor. The assistants who usually greeted her with friendly smiles now gave only curt nods. Some avoided her eyes altogether. She sensed hesitation in handshakes and saw glances that carried a mix of pity and suspicion. She stepped into her office. Barely 3 minutes later, Caleb knocked and walked in, holding an iPad. "Layla, you should see this." He placed the iPad on her desk. The screen displayed a sensational headline: "Ex-janitor now advisor to Morgan Link CEO, merit or media stunt." Layla froze. Below the headline were excerpts from anonymous sources, claiming her role in the negotiation was all for show, that Morgan Link was trying to perform diversity, and that Layla Monroe has no verified credentials and was fired from 3 prior jobs. Below that, hundreds of comments, a chaotic mix of support and attack. Some called her a social climber. Others accused her of being favored for being a Middle Eastern woman who knew how to pick the right powerful man. Layla felt her throat tighten. Not out of fear, but out of pain. No one asked how many nights she'd spent in the UCLA library, juggling 2 part-time jobs. No one knew she was denied a research visa because of her Iranian passport. No one asked why she took a janitorial job, just to send money back to her mother undergoing chemotherapy. All they saw was the trash cart she once pushed, and they assumed that's where she belonged. "I'm sorry," Caleb said quietly. "We couldn't stop the press. Someone inside leaked your old records, possibly someone unhappy with how fast you rose." Layla clenched her fists. "I didn't ask for this position. You offered it. I know, and I believe in you." He paused, his tone steady. "But Layla, there's going to be a board meeting today. Some shareholders want to reevaluate your contract. It won't be easy." Layla looked him in the eye. "Do you want me to step back?" Caleb shook his head instantly. "No, but I want to ask, are you ready to face it?" Layla took a deep breath. "I once stood outside a consulate in the snow for 3 hours to renew my visa. I've cleaned airport bathrooms on night shifts while learning Japanese grammar through worn-out earbuds. If I made it through those, then a boardroom and a few doubting stares won't scare me." Caleb couldn't help but smile slightly. He stood up. "Good. Then let's go." The boardroom was closed to outsiders. 12 members sat around a long wooden table. At the front, a slide projected today's agenda: review of cultural advisor contract. Layla Monroe, an older shareholder, spoke first. "We're not denying her contribution to last week's negotiation, but this company cannot set emotional stories as the standard for recruitment. We need consistency, not exceptions." Layla stood. She held nothing in her hands. She looked each person in the eye. "I'm not asking for your sympathy. I come here with real credentials, a verifiable work history, even if most of that work was in roles you likely never noticed. I don't need special treatment for my gender or ethnicity. I just want to be evaluated fairly by what I've done, not where I came from." At the end of the table, a younger female board member gave a slight nod. "Do you have any evidence of your actual contribution to the recent deal?" Caleb stood up. "I do. Here is a full audio recording of the negotiation. And this, a handwritten letter from Mr. Reza Maradi, addressed directly to Layla, stating, 'Without you, we would have walked away within the first half hour.'" The room fell silent. Another board member spoke. "I don't care if you once cleaned floors or made tea. I just want to know, can you do the job?" And I see now you can. The meeting ended after 40 minutes. Layla didn't say much more, but the look in her eyes as she walked out was the look of someone who had once been dismissed and had now claimed her place on her own terms. That evening, when Caleb knocked on her door, Layla was standing before a glass whiteboard outlining plans for upcoming intercultural projects. "Ready for the next storm?" he asked. Layla turned, her smile soft. "I was raised to survive in the kitchen of life. This office, even if it gets cold, is still the warmest place I've ever stood." Caleb looked at her for a long time, and he knew what he felt was no longer just admiration. It was something more personal. The San Francisco Museum of Modern Art glowed warmly under golden lights. The annual gala, sponsored by Morgan Link, was a grand affair, a convergence of CEOs, investors, politicians, and artists. The dress code was black tie. Champagne flowed freely, and the city's symphony's string section played gently on the open rooftop. Layla stepped out of the car in a floor-length emerald silk gown. Her hair was pinned in a neat updo, exposing her elegant shoulders. Around her neck hung a delicate crescent-shaped pendant, a gift from her mother. Catching the light of the street lamps, she had never entered a space like this before. But she had also never entered one with such quiet confidence. Caleb was already waiting by the entrance when he saw her. His gaze paused. "Longer than usual. You really look different." Layla gave a soft smile. "Different from the woman who used to mop the floors on the 49th floor. Different from anyone here." The gala unfolded exactly as Layla had once imagined when she was a cleaning lady looking up through the basement windows at glittering parties above. Ball gowns, camera flashes, strategic handshakes, and half smiles. She stayed close to Caleb, but always kept a respectful distance. She didn't want to be seen as the CEO's date. She wanted to be seen as herself, Layla Monroe, intercultural communication specialist. The woman who helped rescue a deal from collapse, and one by one, they saw it. What began as curious glances turned into impressed introductions. People came to shake her hand, asking about her techniques in the Iran deal. A representative from the World Bank whispered, "We need someone like you for the North African market." Caleb stood by quietly, saying nothing, but his eyes never left her, not for a single second. At 9 p.m., the lights dimmed and the hosts invited guests to the rooftop terrace. It was the surprise highlight of the evening, a starlit cocktail hour with a live jazz ensemble playing beneath a San Francisco night sky. Layla stood by the railing, the breeze brushing through her hair. Caleb joined her hands in his pockets. "Do you remember the night you answered that phone call?" She nodded, smiling. "I thought you were going to fire me for touching the CEO's desk. I thought I was hearing a voice that would change this company." They stood in silence for a moment. Layla tilted her head slightly. "Caleb." "Why me?" He didn't answer right away. Only after a while did he say, "Because you never asked for a chance. You made it impossible to ignore you." Layla turned to face him. The space between them was barely half a breath, but she stepped back slightly. "I don't want to be remembered as a passing crush in your life." Caleb blinked, caught off guard, "And I don't want to be the reason you walk away from what you've just started building." Their eyes met. No rushing. No romantic dramatics. Just two grown people, both aware that something was growing, and that if rushed, it might break. On the drive home, Layla remained silent most of the way. She stared out the window, the city stretching like a galaxy outside. Caleb sat beside her, saying nothing either, but his hand resting quietly on the center console, just a little closer to hers than usual. Layla didn't pull away. She didn't hold it either. She just left it there, enough to know they were no longer standing where they once had. That night, back in her small apartment, Layla didn't take off her dress right away. She sat down on the floor, opened her notebook, and wrote, "Some feelings don't need names right away. They just need to run deep enough not to fade." Saturday morning, Layla woke later than usual. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, warm and soft, just like the feeling in her chest after the gala night. She still remembered Caleb's eyes when they stood beneath the San Francisco sky. Something had opened between them, not a promise, but a door. She made a cup of mint tea and sat by the window, planning to finish her draft proposal for the intercultural communication training in the Africa project. Then her phone buzzed. A new email from Sarah Monroe. Subject: Mom time, 3:42 a.m., Tehran time. Layla sat up straight. Her hands trembled as she opened the message. "Layla June, I know you're busy, but I can't keep it from you any longer. Mom fainted in the kitchen last week. The doctor says the old tumor has returned. You remember they once said it could come back within 5 years without proper monitoring. Mom hid it. She didn't want to worry you while you're starting your new life, but this time, I'm not. Sure, she'll pull through if you can come. Not for anyone else, just for yourself. I didn't dare call, you'd hear me crying." Sarah. Layla read the message over and over. At some point, the tears had begun to fall, and she hadn't even noticed. Her mother, the tiny woman who always packed food in old tin boxes and mailed it from Tehran, who wrote letters in purple ink, who always said, "You must live long enough to see yourself recognized." Her mother, who taught her her first words in FARSI, who once said, "When the world won't listen to you, speak with your whole heart." That entire day, Layla felt adrift. She came into the office but never turned on her computer. All the files seemed foreign. The meetings, the KPIs, the strategies, they belonged to another world. Now by afternoon, Caleb walked in. You all right? I saw you canceled all your meetings. Layla handed him her phone. He read the email. He didn't ask anything more. He simply sat across from her. After a long pause, he asked, "Do you want to go?" Layla nodded softly, her voice tight. "I don't know if I'm still in time, but I have to." "Then go." "What about work?" "It'll wait for you." "I will too." For the first time, he reached for her hand, not firmly. Not possessive lie, just enough to say, "You're not alone." 2 days later, Layla boarded a plane to Tehran. She packed light, only a carry-on and a small box containing a gift she had meant to give her mother for a long time, a large print of the article titled "The Woman Behind the Morgan Link-Huron Deal," with a handwritten note at the bottom, "You were right, Mom. I just had to wait for the world to see me." The flight lasted nearly 20 hours. As the plane descended, the city of Tehran appeared, cloaked in morning mist. Stepping off the aircraft felt like unfolding a piece of her memory that had been sealed for too long. Sarah was waiting outside the airport. Their hug broke down in the middle of the crowded walkway, she's still holding on. Sarah whispered. The hospital was old, with chipped paint on the walls, but the beds were clean, and the air was quiet. Layla entered to find her mother lying there, thinner, hair grayer, but with the same eyes. The eyes of someone who had once walked the world barefoot and still believed in goodness. Layla June, her voice was weak, but warm. Layla dropped to her knees by the bed. "I'm here." "Mom, I'm home." They held each other in silence. No words were needed. After a while, her mother finally said, "I'm sorry I hid it from you. But I knew if no one reminded you of home, you'd fly too far." Layla held her hand. "No, Mom, I'm always here. I just had to go far, too. Learn how to come back." She stayed in Tehran for a week, went with her mother to therapy, read books aloud by her bedside, bought sweet pastries from the old bazaar, watched the sunset with Sarah on the rooftop, and every night, before bed, she wrote letters to Caleb, not emails, but real letters, the kind her mother used to write. She wrote about the smell of tea in the mornings, the jasmine bush outside the window, and the silence shared between people who didn't need to speak to understand each other. She never sent the letters. She just tucked them into a box, waiting for the day she would return and hand them to him, one by one. A week in Tehran passed like a beautiful and fragile dream. Layla's mother's health hadn't improved much, but it hadn't worsened either. She was still alert enough to tell stories, to smile, to stroke her daughter's hair like she used to when Layla was little, studying beside her. Listening to soft Persian fairy tales, Sarah encouraged Layla to return to San Francisco. "Mom will be okay. You were here when she needed you the most. Now it's your turn to return to your dreams." Layla packed her bags. Her heart was heavy, but also lighter than before, because this time she wasn't leaving to escape. She was leaving knowing she would return. Somehow, the flight back to the U.S. Tehran to Istanbul to San Francisco lasted nearly 24 hours by the time the plane touched down at SFO. Layla was exhausted. Her eyes were sunken, hair tousled, and her heart felt hollow from a goodbye. With no certainty of a next hello, she pulled her suitcase through the arrivals hall and froze in her tracks. Among the crowd of greeters, name boards, flowers, and phone music, she saw Caleb Morgan, wearing a white shirt, no jacket, holding a cup of coffee and a familiar old leather notebook. It was the one she'd left on her desk. Layla couldn't believe her eyes. What are you doing here?" Caleb walked over and handed her the notebook. "You left this behind. Inside were strategy drafts I've never seen written with such depth. You flew here just for a notebook." He looked at her, no smile. "No, I came because I didn't want the woman I care about walking out of an airport alone after leaving her mother in a hospital." Layla said nothing. She looked at him among the sea of American, Chinese, Indian, and Japanese faces around them, and for the first time, his face no longer belonged to a busy CEO. It belonged to a man learning how to love, quietly, without conditions, like the sun waiting patiently behind the rain. They rode back to the city in silence. Caleb didn't say much. He just turned on music, the same soft jazz Layla had heard the night of the gala. A breeze drifted through the open window. San Francisco slid by in scenes both familiar and new. Layla stared out the window. Her voice soft. I kept wondering if I should come back. Wondering if everything I had at Morgan Link might disappear if I stayed away too long. It won't, Caleb said, eyes on the road. You're not a title, you're a value. Silence. And I'm not just a CEO either, he added. I'm someone choosing you, if you'll let me. Layla turned to look at him. The air in the car seemed to hold still. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she opened her bag and pulled out a box, the one containing the handwritten letters she'd written during her nights in Tehran. She handed it to him. Read it when you have time. Caleb took it. He didn't open it immediately. But something in his eyes changed, as if what he held wasn't just paper, but a chance he'd been waiting for all his life. The next day, Layla returned to the office. She passed the hallways she had once cleaned, once wiped down. Every corner held memories. But this time, no one looked at her like she didn't belong. They nodded. They made room. They called her Ms. Monroe. She entered her office, still scented faintly with the peppermint oil she liked. On the desk was a simple card. Welcome back. We kept everything just for you. The executive board. Layla sat down. She opened her laptop and began going through backlogged emails. But her heart was calm. She no longer needed to prove she belonged. She knew she did. That evening, Caleb invited her out. They met at a tiny Iranian restaurant on Mission Street, the same place where she had once worked during her first year of college. Caleb ordered orange blossom tea. Layla ordered grilled lamb. They ate like ordinary people, laughed like two souls who had survived something. As they left the restaurant, Caleb said, I read all 10 letters. Layla stopped in her tracks. Caleb stepped closer, gently. If you want, from tomorrow on, we don't have to write letters anymore. Why not? Because I want to hear it from you. Every day. Layla laughed, then choked up. There was no kiss that night, just two people holding hands, walking through San Francisco's mist, as if the road ahead, no matter how uncertain, would never feel lonely again. 1 month after returning from Tehran, Layla stood before the large projection screen in Morgan Link's International Conference Room. On the screen was the title, Project Helix, Cross-Cultural Communication for a Global Workforce. Layla was leading the project, a collaborative initiative between Morgan Link and 3 international organizations, aiming to build a multilingual, multicultural communication training system for over 40 countries where the company operated. Caleb had given her full authority. Helix isn't just a project, Layla, he had once said. It's a vision. And only you truly understand that the world can't function if it doesn't learn how to listen. Layla accepted without hesitation. But she knew, at that very moment, a different path was quietly beginning to open. A week later, she received an invitation from UNESCO. They wanted her to lead a similar initiative in the Middle East, based in Paris, lasting 3 years. You'll head a team of 12 experts, have an independent budget and direct authority, the representative had said. But more importantly, we need someone like you, not an academic in an ivory tower, but a woman who's walked through the layered reality of this world. Layla said nothing. She asked for time to think. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by her apartment window, watching the city lights reflect on the glass. Over the years, she'd gone so many places, from cleaning floors to directing teams, from Tehran's airport to global conference halls. And now, another door was opening, a dream she once never dared to dream. But what about Caleb? What about Helix, into which she had poured her soul? She hadn't planned to bring it up, but Caleb sensed it. That evening, as they shared dinner in his apartment, he poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from her. "Paris?" he asked. Layla flinched. "Who told you?" "Offered you the role? Everyone knows. But I don't think they know you carry a fire they've never seen." Layla looked down. "I don't know what to choose. They're both real opportunities." Caleb watched her for a moment, then smiled gently. "You once told me, when the world won't listen, speak with your whole heart. So listen to yourself, not to me, not to Morgan Link. Just to that voice inside you." La froze. He added softly, "Whether you stay or go, I choose to believe in you. And I'll wait, if that's what it takes." It was the first time Caleb had ever said he'd wait, without attaching any conditions, and it was the first time Layla felt not bound by love, but uplifted by it. 3 days later, Layla sent an email turning down UNESCO's offer, not out of fear, but because she knew that dreams didn't always have to look like Paris or come with global influence. Her dream was to create a place where every voice, no matter how small, could be heard, and Morgan Link, with Project Helix, was exactly that, she wrote in the email. "I'm deeply honored, but I believe the greatest change doesn't come from grand halls. It comes from listening persistently, right where people have long been ignored." Caleb read the rejection email and said nothing. He simply replied with a message. "Someday, when Helix is complete, let me take you to Paris, not for work, but for us." Layla smiled. She understood then, the most beautiful thing wasn't making the right choice, it was having someone who'd wait for you to choose yourself. Project Helix launched across 3 continents simultaneously. Layla flew constantly, but every time she returned to San Francisco, Caleb was there at the airport with hot coffee, a new book, and the same unwavering gaze. People in the company began to whisper about their relationship. Layla didn't care. She knew exactly what they had, a bond that didn't need to be flaunted. No labels, no rules. Just strong enough not to be swept away. One night, as they sat on the rooftop of Morgan Link's headquarters, Layla looked at the city sparkling below. She asked softly, "If I were still a cleaning woman, would you have stopped for me?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He took her hand. "If you were still cleaning floors, then I probably would have started mopping too, just for the chance to talk to you." Layla burst out laughing, a light laugh, a very real one. 1 year after Project Helix officially launched, Morgan Link's headquarters hosted a celebration to mark the success of its initial phase. Global partners, media representatives, and government leaders from several countries were present. Layla stood before hundreds of guests, presenting her team's achievements. Over 12,000 employees trained in cross-cultural communication. Conflict metrics down by 63%. International response times improved by 40%. But when asked what made her most proud, Layla simply said, "It was when an employee in Nairobi wrote, 'For the first time in my life, a director listened to me without needing me to speak broken English.'" The applause rose long and warm. As for Caleb seated in the front row, he didn't clap. He just looked at her as if no speech could ever say more than that gaze. After the event, Layla didn't stay for the reception. She left early, alone. Walking through the streets of San Francisco once unfamiliar, comfortingly familiar, she stopped in front of a small red brick building on a quiet corner. The sign above the door had changed. Monroe and Morgan Institute for Global Communication. A modest office, just enough for 1 meeting room, 2 desks, and a mini library filled with books on language, culture, and education. Not owned by any corporation. Not chasing profit. Just for those who believed that communication was a bridge, not a wall. Layla had proposed the institute. Caleb didn't object. He had only asked, "Who will you run it with?" Layla smiled. "You, if you're okay with minimum wage." Caleb laughed. It was the first time he ever signed a contract as a research assistant to the girl who once cleaned his office floor. On weekends, they often came there together. No big conversations. Just reading, editing translations, cooking instant noodles. Listening to old Farsi music. One afternoon, as Layla was typing, Caleb suddenly looked up. "There's something I want to ask you." In your 8th letter, you wrote, "When my heart no longer feels lost, that's when I'll stop running." Layla paused her typing. Caleb walked over and sat beside her. "Are you ready now to stop here with me?" Didn't respond with words, she just took his hand. That was enough to know. Her heart had stopped wandering. They didn't have a grand wedding. Just a quiet afternoon in the small garden behind the institute. Sarah flew in from Tehran, carrying the headscarf their mother had saved for Layla's wedding day. Their mother couldn't fly, but she joined via video call. She saw her daughter standing beside the man she loved, not in pride or prestige, but in peace. Caleb wore a simple white shirt. Layla, an earthy-toned long dress. She spoke her vows. In Farsi, he spoke his in English, no translator. Just a smile, a shared look, and one truth between two hearts. We finally found each other. That evening, they sat together. No music, no party. Caleb poured wine. Layla handed him an envelope. "A wedding gift for you." He opened it. It was an old sheet of paper, the ink faded. Application for night shift janitorial position. Experience, 3 years. Special skills. Speaks Farsi, Arabic, a bit of French. Reason for applying: trying to survive in America without losing my roots. Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then he folded the paper gently and tucked it into his shirt pocket. "I'm keeping this as a reminder that the greatest things often begin from the smallest places." Layla leaned her head on his shoulder. The wind still blew outside, but in her heart, there was already a home. Thank you for staying with us until the very last moment. We hope Layla's journey, the girl once overlooked because of her janitor's uniform, who managed to reach the heart of a CEO through language, persistence, and a heart that knows how to listen, left something behind for you. Maybe it was empathy. Maybe it was the courage to rise. Or maybe just the quiet belief that you don't have to shout to be heard, only speak with all your heart. If you saw a part of yourself in her story, leave us a comment. We're always listening. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next story where love isn't loud, but it's true. See you again soon on another gentle journey.